All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
His Holiness Romapada Swami Maharaj ki jai.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I'm going to read a verse from Bhagavad Gita. I just opened the book to Chapter 9, text number 11. I'm going to chant the verse, and I think many of you know the verse, so you can chant responsively. Avajananti Mamudha Anushim Tanamashritam Arambhavam Ajananto Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram. Very good. Let's do it again. Do you know the verse? No? Any of our young devotees here, children, know the verse? They can chant from memory? Yes. Go ahead. Very good. Could you hear? He got it. Anyone else? Okay, we'll chant responsively. Avajananti Mamudha Manushim Tanam Ashritam Arambhavam Ajananto Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram. Translation: Fools deride me when I descend in human form. They do not know my transcendental nature, which is as the Supreme Lord of all that be. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. From the other explanations of the previous verses in this chapter, it is clear that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although appearing like a human being, is not a common man. The Personality of Godhead, who conducts the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the complete cosmic manifestation, cannot be a human being. Yet, there are many foolish men who consider Krishna to be merely a powerful man and nothing more. Actually, he is the original Supreme Personality as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. Ishvara Parama Krishna. He is the Supreme Lord. There are many Ishwaras, or controllers, and one appears greater than another. If the ordinary management of affairs in the material world, in the ordinary management of affairs in the material world, we find some official or director, and above him there is a secretary, and above him a minister, and above him a president. Each of them is a controller, but one is controlled by another. In Brahma Samhita it is said that Krishna is the supreme controller. There are many controllers, undoubtedly, both in the material and spiritual world, but Krishna is the supreme controller. Ishvara Parama Krishna, and his body is Satchit Ananda, or non-material. Paragraph. Material bodies cannot perform the wonderful acts described in the previous verses. His body is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. Although he is not a common man, the foolish deride him and consider him to be a man. His body is called here Manushim because he is acting just like a man, a friend of Arjuna's, a politician involved in the battle of Kurukshetra. In so many ways he is acting just like an ordinary man, but actually his body is Satchit Ananda Vigraha, eternal bliss and knowledge, absolute. This is confirmed in the Vedic language also. Satchit Ananda Rupaya Krishnaya, from Gopal Tapani Upanishad. I offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, who is the eternal blissful form of knowledge. There are other descriptions in the Vedic language also. Tam ekam govindam. You are Govinda, the pleasure of the senses and the cows. Satchidananda vigraham. And your form is transcendental, full of knowledge, bliss, and eternality. Again, Gopal Tapani Upanishad. Paragraph. Despite the transcendental qualities of the Lord's body, its full bliss and knowledge, there are many so-called scholars and commentators on Bhagavad Gita who deride Krishna as an ordinary man. The scholar may be born an extraordinary man due to his previous good work, but this conception of Sri Krishna is due to poor fund of knowledge. Therefore, he is called Mudha, or for the foolish persons consider Krishna to be an ordinary human being. The foolish consider Krishna an ordinary human being because they do not know the confidential activities of the Supreme Lord and his different energies. They do not know that Krishna's body is a symbol of complete knowledge and bliss, that he is the proprietor of everything, and that he can award liberation to anyone, because they do not know that Krishna has so many transcendental qualifications. They deride him. So I just turned the page and purport goes on for 2 more pages. Should I read it? Maybe. Yes. Okay. Nor do they know that the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this material world is a manifestation of his internal potency, another very important feature. When Krishna appears, he appears by his own will. And His own will is executed by his own potency. Not only by his own will, he decides where and who his mother and father will be and what he'll look like, and which one of us can say those things? Did you decide who your mother and father would be? How was that decided? That was decided by Daivinetrena, by superior authority. And it's that superior authority considers one's guna and karma, but Krishna has no material quality, and he has no karma. And he doesn't appear by force, he appears by will. And he disappears by will. And he does whatever he does just by his own internal potency. No one can say that. Krishna is saying that. He is the master of the material energy. Who can say that? Krishna can say that. That's in the previous verse. Maya dyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetunanena punteya jagat viparivartate. He doesn't appear by his external energy, but he's in control of his external energy. Whatever it does is under his direction. Very special person. He claims that the material energy, although very powerful, is under his control. And whoever surrenders unto him can get out of the control of this material energy. If the soul surrendered to Krishna can get out of the influence of the material energy, then how can the Supreme Lord, who conducts the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the whole cosmic nature, have a material body like us, under the control of material nature? It's not very reasonable conclusion. He who controls the material nature is under the control of the material nature. Not very reasonable. So he who controls material nature must be the controller not only of the material nature but the spiritual nature, and by the agency of spiritual nature, Srijam Yaham. Different verse. Srijam Yaham means he manifests himself by his own potency. So this conception of Krishna as an ordinary man is completely foolish. Foolish persons, however, cannot conceive that the personality of Godhead, Krishna, appears just like an ordinary man and can be the controller of all the atoms and of the gigantic manifestation of the universal form. That's another mystery, or it's due to the inconceivable potency of the personality of Godhead. The inconceivable potency of the personality of Godhead. Jiva Goswami, in his commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam called the Sandarbhas, he makes a very simple statement that's very powerful. The statement is that without accepting that the personality of Godhead has inconceivable potencies, achintya shakti, there's no question of understanding God. So just expand that a little bit. If one says, as some scholars say, you can't have potency because then you have two things. You have potent and potency. So there can't be potency, there can only be potent. There can only be Brahman, no potency. The logic is there. No potency because then you have two things, potent and potency. So there can be no potency. All there is Brahman. But if Brahman is the greatest, by one sense of the definition of the term, then how can you say Brahman, there's something that Brahman doesn't have? Is that realistic? minus something. So I can have potency, but God can't have potency. Whatever that potency is, I can lift my arm. Of course, it's possible that the potency to lift my arm is taken away. Then I can't lift my arm. But while I can lift my arm, there's some potency to lift my arm, or digest my food, or blink my eyelid, or walk across the floor, or whatever. Some potency is there. If the individual has some potency, or anything has some potency, God has no potency. Not reasonable. But alternatively, if the absolute, supreme entity has unlimited potency, then accepting that, one can begin to understand God. That's his explanation. And once that acknowledgement is made, the absolute that includes everything has potency, then anything is possible. Or conversely, there's nothing impossible. And so, one of the possibilities that's presented here is that he simultaneously controls every atom and simultaneously controls the whole universal form, the cosmic manifestation in its totality all at once. Or in the Vedic language, Anor Aniyamsam Anusmared Yata. He's smaller than the smallest and bigger than the biggest at the same time. So someone maybe can be small, or someone maybe can be big. To be smaller than the smallest, that's extreme. But just even say small and big at the same time, maybe back and forth, small and then big and then big and then small. But at the same time, smaller than the smallest and bigger than the biggest. How is that? By his mystic power, like yogis, some yogis can become Mahima, and some can become Laghima. Some can become very large. Some can become very small. Or some can become very heavy, and some can become very light. But Krishna can do both at the same time. He can enter into the atom, which is the smallest particle of matter. And at the same time, from that same body that enters into the atom, from his transcendental body, all of the universes emanate from the pores of his transcendental body as he exhales. Try it. Where are the universes? It's not happening. I'll keep doing my yoga practice, maybe. It's not going to happen. And simultaneously, the universes are coming and he's entering into every atom. Simultaneously. So, how is this possible? Or this is chapter 9. In the beginning of chapter 9, early verses of chapter 9, Krishna describes similar apparent inconsistencies or contradictions. Everything is within him. Everything is within him. And he is outside of everything. I'll read the language. By me, in my unmanifested form, the entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. And yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. So there's the opulent, the possessor of potency, and the potency. Although I'm the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, I am not part of this cosmic manifestation, for myself is the very source of creation. I call this Upanishadic double talk. Just like in the Ishopanishad. He walks, and he does not walk. He's very near as well, and he's very far away. He's within everything, and he is outside of everything. Hello? Which is it? This or that? And it's simultaneously. So how is this? It's the exhibition of his mystic power. And to help understand this explanation that Krishna is giving, he gives an example, a very nice example. And it's a very deep example too, although it's very simple. He says, understand that as the mighty wind blowing everywhere, the wind is blowing everywhere. It rests in the sky or in space. Also understand all beings rest in me. So how is it that the mighty wind rests in space or the sky? So here's the wind blowing. And as the wind is blowing, what's happening to the sky? Nothing. Because the sky is more subtle. So the wind can stop or the wind can move. It doesn't affect the sky at all because the sky is more subtle. And in that way, the wind is resting within the sky. But the sky remains unchanged, whatever the wind is doing. And so similarly, Krishna is unchanged because he's not only more subtle, he's the emanating source of all existence, not only the material elements, but the spiritual sky, and the Brahmajyoti and the Paramatma features that are the objects of meditation of the impersonalist and the yogi. And they rest within Krishna. And he confirms that in the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. The Brahman, which is the source of all things, Krishna is the pratishta, or basis and support of Brahman. So Brahman is within Krishna and all things are within Brahman. Everything is within Krishna. But at the same time, he has his own existence in Goloka Vrindavan. And he's unmoved by the wind blowing or the sky or the creation coming and going. It doesn't come and go except by his will, and yet he exists in a separate feature altogether, unmoved by the changes of this changing situation that doesn't change without his sanction. He's unchanged. He's the transcendental source of all. And by his yogam aishvaryam, his mystic power or mystic opulence, all things are. So when that same, the purport here is describing, when that same supreme source of everything appears in this world, and he appears in a Satchit Ananda, spiritual, eternal, full of knowledge form, people think, oh, he's one of us. And Krishna is describing persons who think like that as that they're not a complimentary term to say they're mudha. They're foolish. Say it nicer. They made a mistake. It's a foolish notion. It's a foolish notion if you understand all the other things that Krishna is saying, then it's a foolish conclusion to think he's under the influence of the material energy like us. How can he be under the influence of the material energy when he's in control of the material energy? We were discussing over the weekend, I'm not going to read the rest of the purport, I'll just go to a very general explanation. During the weekend we were reading and discussing the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev to Devahuti. And the teachings of Kapila Dev are in different language, expressing the same thing that Krishna is expressing in Bhagavad Gita, because it's the same person. Different forms of the Lord with Satchit Ananda Vigraha feature, full of knowledge, full of bliss and eternality. But the teaching that Lord Kapila Dev is giving is it's a very elevated explanation, a very detailed and elevated explanation of the workings of the material energy, Sankhya, and distinct from the workings of the material energy, the realm of spirit, the soul and the Supreme Soul, and how the Supreme Soul, Krishna, by his various energies brings about creation and maintains creation and annihilates creation. And it's in detail. It's not making a quick statement like that. It's several chapters with minute detail explaining. If you're a scientist, you'll love it. If you're not a scientist, your jaw will drop. It's very detailed. It's very, very remarkable, amazing. And I shared this with the group over the weekend, this holiday weekend, that Srila Prabhupada created a division of ISKCON of PhD scientists who had the assignment of communicate with your scientist colleagues, your PhD fellows, in language that they will understand, to help them appreciate the source of everything is a Supreme Person. That was the assignment. So one of the events that took place some years ago, that group was called the Bhaktivedanta Institute. So the branch of the Bhaktivedanta Institute in Berkeley, California. And they had established some friendship with a professor, a Nobel laureate in physics, who is from the Bay Area, to go to the Bombay branch of the Bhaktivedanta Institute in Juhu, take a month and a half sabbatical of studying Kapila Dev's teachings on Sankhya philosophy. Month and a half. And the assignment was, in studying Sankhya philosophy, please make it an evaluation, some determination. The things that you read there, this ancient philosophy of Sankhya, is there anything in modern science that would contradict it or prove it false? Falsifiability is the language in the scientific community. So he accepted the invitation. Has very nice climate, right by the beach, so he would rise very early in the morning, even before the devotees got up. He was an intense man. Early to bed and work hard all day long. Early to rise and work hard all day long. He was up before Mangalarti every morning. The room where he stayed was overlooking where the temple room is. So he was up and his light was on, watching Mangalarti from his room. And then he didn't go chant his japa, he just sat down with the Bhagavatam and started reading the Bhagavatam. From 7 o'clock in the morning until 7 o'clock at night with the lunch break. An intense person. He did that for a month and a half. Professor Henry Stapp, S-T-A-P-H. And then he wrote a little booklet after that study and concluded there's nothing in what Kapila Dev teaches, nothing in the Sankhya philosophy, that there's hard evidence within the field of modern science today, at least to his knowledge, that would contradict or prove it false. You know, the whole idea of modern science is not that everything comes from a Supreme Person. There's a very different idea where everything comes from. But there's nothing in what some philosophy says that contradicts modern science. Then he wrote a little bold, that besides a little booklet that he was commissioned for, he wrote articles in scientific journals explaining this is a very profound philosophy and so forth and so on. But it's not just a philosophy, it's a description of how everything works. Basically the cause and effect, or the push and the pull of how something wiggles over here and something wiggles over there because it's connected, and then that wiggles and something else wiggles. That's technology. You find out the cause and effect of something and develop a product and sell it. Make a living that way. So this is a teaching that describes the original cause that causes all effects is a supreme person with a spiritual form of eternal knowledge and bliss. So Krishna is making that declaration here in Bhagavad Gita that not only